Hello, club members. Welcome to our fourth lecture of this Unity tutorials. I think this will be the second to last lecture where I'll be talking about audio. So we're actually going to talk about how to work with audio in Unity, whether it's background music or sound effects. Audio plays like a huge role in making the game you're making sound better and feel more immersive. There are two main types of audio that we're actually going to work with, which is background music and sound effects. Background music, of course, sets the atmosphere, while the sound effects help with, interactions and like a jump or collision. You can have a jump sound effect, a running sound effect, or collision sound effect. But yeah, let's now move on to Unity. Let's talk about the three components that we'll be using for audio. So if you press add component here and then search up audio source, this is what actually plays the sound. Think of it like the speaker in the game. So this is the first component. The next component we'll add is the audio clip. And audio clip is actually in the audio source itself and this is the actual sound file. So it's like a music track or a sound effect. So if you want to add your music track to this, then I'm going to actually open one of my music tracks and drag it over into this audio clip part. Firstly, I'll have to add it to the assets folder so that it's attachable in Unity. And once you do that, click on player and you should be able to drag it onto the audio clip. And this is the music. So I think it's actually really loud. Let me see how loud this is. Yeah, it's pretty loud. And you can also preview the audio clip by pressing this play button right here. And I think it's super loud, so I'm just gonna edit the audio while I'm, sending this. But so that's the audio clip. Of course, you guys probably heard of that. It's a very common track like content creators use, but I just use that for an example. And then the next thing we have is something called an audio listener. So let's see if usually, yeah, the camera actually has an active audio listener. This is what actually hears the sound. Typically, it's attached to the camera and it acts like the player's ears in the game. So you can also, I'm pretty sure, let's see, you can add it to other game objects, such as this player, this audio listener, and now you'll have two audio listeners in the scene. It's usually a good idea to try and limit the number of audio listeners you have in the scene. It's best to keep it one for simplicity purposes, but sometimes having two might be better if you want to make a really immersive game where you can hear things uh, from one of your ears. If you're wearing headphones, you may turn left and the volume turns up because you have two audio listeners instead of one. Whereas if you have one, it will sound the same in both sides of the headphones. So just keep that in mind when using audio listeners. And yeah, so we added background music now, and the way you do that, like I said, we have to drag it onto the assets folder. We can't manually go into the player game object and drag it from here because you can see this like red icon which is saying you can't do this. It's because it's not Unity asset yet. The way to make it a Unity asset is by dragging it here. But since I already did that, I'm gonna leave it like this and go back to Unity. So we're actually going to set up another audio source where let's delete all these. Let's delete this game component and we're going to create an empty game object. Let's create an empty game object and let's actually once we click on this empty game object, let's press add component, then press audio source. Now, um, Now you'll see the field where you can drag your music file into the audio clip slot. So let's drag this in here, drag this music track in this audio clip slot. And once that's done, it should be playing. So let's press play and see whether the music starts playing. Should automatically when it runs. So give it a minute. All right, yeah, it's playing. So that's good. So now let's start actually adding sound effects. So like playing a sound when the player collides, or let's just add something to make it sound more immersive. Let's add the one of these sound effects into our project. I have a whoosh sound effect here. So we'll be using this when the player game object will be doing something. So let's see what we want the player to do. We're actually going to create a script. So let's actually create a script that plays sound when, let's say, the player something collides with the player. So let's hover over create, press C# script, and call this play sound on collision. Once that's done, open it. Now we created our script, called it play sound on collision, and I actually already have a chunk of code that I'm gonna paste, which I'll explain in a bit. So, all right. So, I explained what variables are, and I also explained what classes are. I'll go more in depth in the actual C# coding for those of you interested in coding. But this is a reference to our audio source variable, and since it's public, we can access this through Unity. Now, let's talk about what this onCollisionEnter is. So, onCollisionEnter is actually a method Unity calls automatically when two objects bump into each other. So when the collision happens, the audio source will play the sound we attach, which in this case is this variable called audio source. I'll actually call it something like whoosh source, and all your variables have to make sense. You can't just say like public audio source W. For someone else reading this code, this will not make sense. Like, what is W? So you have to make it have meaning when you make your variable names. So something you can actually do is, okay, let me change it back to audio source. You can double click on this variable name, then press Control R and then R again while holding Control. Now you can type whoosh sound effect to rename every time, every reference to this variable, every time this variable was even mentioned to rename it all to what you want it. So this is something that just a shortcut you can do. Once again, this is kind of more the coding aspect of Unity, but coding is always going to be a part of Unity. You'll need to understand some of that. But yeah. Anyways, ignore what this line is. You can actually I'll actually just delete this line, but what this line basically means is if this whoosh sound effect, what that line I just deleted, if that whoosh sound effect exists, meaning we actually reference what this whoosh sound effect is from Unity, that means it will play. But we don't need that because we'll automatically be referencing it. So I'll just save it like this, press Control S, and yeah, since the script is ready, let's go back to Unity. So let's add the script first. Let's add the play sound on collision like that. And then let's also add our audio source like this. Now drag this audio source into this slot from the script, and it should be playing when our player game object interacts with another or collides with another game object. So I'm actually going to move this player a bit up purely because I think it's almost touching the plane, the ground, so that we can clearly see the whoosh sound effect gets played when it interacts with it or when it collides with it. So yeah, let's actually try this and let's just play the whoosh sound effect. Of what? Oh, I have the wrong. Okay, that's why. All right, this should be better now. So it something to notice is it actually plays when the scene starts. So if we don't want that, let's yeah, we should remove this play on awake call because it plays as soon as the we press run on this scene. So let's remove this and now it should be working. So let's see. There we go. So now that it works completely fine, I forgot to note that this play on awake should always be unchecked if you are working with sound effects. If you want the player game object to interact with something and then play the sound effect, we'll have to remove this. Otherwise, leave it on. Modify it according to your own preference or needs, like based on what you're making. But that's just something to note. I'm sorry for not mentioning this play on awake, and I also mixed up the audio track I wanted to play. I instead put the shop channel music instead of the whoosh sound effect. But you can see how it works. Instead of this whoosh sound effect, you can actually you can probably just search up some collision sound effect out there, find it online, and then just place it in this audio clip slot, and it will have like a realistic feel to it when you know maybe um yeah, so you saw it play again. So maybe when this game object collides with the plane, you'll have an actual maybe splat sound effect. Just things like that to take into account. You can be practical with it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this audio source, uh this audio lecture for Unity. The next lecture, I'm actually gonna talk about like how to use other softwares like Blender, Piscolab, or any music software um, like Beatbox or Bosca Sea Oil to like import those tracks or creations into Unity. How that works. I mean, you already know how to import tracks into Unity. Once you make them from, let's say, one of your music softwares, you can just drag it into here and it will automatically convert into a source. That's it for this audio lesson. So we've covered how to set up background music, add sound effects triggered by like certain actions, like player collisions, and you're even able to adjust some 3D sound settings, which is why we have which I was talking about the audio listeners. Having multiple could, enhance your audio experience or dehance it based on the type of game you're making. Stay tuned for the next lecture. I'll be talking about how to use other softwares, import models into Unity from Blender or, you know, sprites from Piscolab to Unity, um, or tracks from some music software into Unity. But that's pretty much it. And yeah, thank you guys for watching.